Hello again, everyone. Today I'm going to do kind of an experimental landscape in my sketchbook. But what I want to do is add some texture. So I have this tissue paper here, and this is just regular tissue paper that I'm going to actually Modge Podge on here. I also pulled some pastels that I may try. They do sort of, they are soluble with water, so it's kind of another mark making tool that you can use. It sort of acts like paint once it's wet. But the first thing I want to do is sort of just crumple up my tissue paper and get it on here. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to take some water, and I think I'll just pour some in here. So a little bit of water, and I'm basically just going to dilute the Modge Podge. So it's about 50-50. It could be a little bit more on the wet side than on the dry side. And I'm just going to mix that up really good. And then this sketchbook is actually a watercolor sketchbook, so this may be a little too wet. We'll see if it actually sticks. I'm going to put my tissue paper down here, and since this is a landscape, I'm going to try to do it in a way that maybe looks a little bit like landscape texture at the bottom. Yeah, this is probably too wet. I probably need just a tiny bit more glue. You should be able to kind of brush this on there without it ripping up your tissue paper. You can rip it and form it a little bit if you want. Now you can keep going and sort of flattening this out completely if you want, or you can leave it dry with a little bit more texture. Since this is in my sketchbook, I'm going to actually flatten it out pretty well. Maybe the stuff on the end I'll pull off. And now I have to let this dry. So I could roller this, but I think because it's so wet, if I roller it, it's just going to stick on there. So I'm just going to gently use my hand and push down any sort of really big lumps that I see. And this is dry down here, so that's going to need a little bit of glue. Okay, and then we're just going to let this dry. I'm going to probably let this dry overnight just to make sure that it's really nice and dry. So now my tissue paper that I glued onto a page in my sketchbook is dry, and I am going to add some watercolor paints. I still have my pastels. I also grabbed a sepia acrylic ink. I may or may not use that, but I really wanted to try these new granulating watercolors from Schmincke that I got a while back. I did use them on one other project, but I haven't used them since. And they're all these really earthy, sort of light colors. So I grabbed a couple Daniel Smith colors as well. I have Hematite Genuine, which is sort of a dark blue, and then Jadeite. Genuine, which is more of a green color. Because I was thinking landscape here. I formed this in kind of the form of a landscape, so I was thinking that as an initial direction for this particular painting. Now I'm using watercolor because this tissue paper, even though it's glued down, is still pretty receptive to watercolor, and it absorbs it, and it's transparent, so you see some of the white through there. If I were to go over it with acrylic paint or even acrylic ink, you might not get that transparency, and it might just kind of be really, really dark. I do have some acrylic ink here, so if I don't think it's dark enough with these watercolors, I may add that in. But I'm going to go ahead and just get started with these. And I have this old watercolor palette that I had when I first started doing watercolor. I had all my colors labeled, but I don't use it anymore. So I'm just going to use it to put these colors in. Okay, so here is Desert Orange. These are all called Desert something, so they're all in the Desert color series, and they're all super granulating colors. So this is Desert Brown. Oh, that's got some white in it. Let's put it in here. Okay, and here's the Desert Gray. Finally got that one open. And you'll see I haven't used them in a while, so the binder is starting to separate from the pigments. And then my Daniel Smith colors are Hematite Genuine, which is a darker color. You can see I haven't used these in a while. I don't do a lot of watercolor with these pigments, but I do use them occasionally with landscapes when I want some granulating effects. And this is Jadeite Genuine, which is a nice dark green. All right, so let's get some water in these. So this is almost black. That's the Hematite Genuine, the Daniel Smith color. So I think I'll start with that one. And I'm just going to, maybe I'll give it a little bit of a spray just to sort of wet the, but the interesting thing with the tissue paper is that it has these peaks and valleys now that create some texture. I don't know if the granulation, got a hair in here, a brush hair, if the granulation will really show up much in all this texture. Whoops, all this texture. Add a little bit of the darker color. I'm going to put some down here just so we can see, kind of see the granulation working. Now, the Jadeite green is really, really green, but it's a beautiful color. It's kind of like an emerald green. Maybe we'll put some down here and just kind of let it all mix. And I'm going to give it a good spray again, just so stuff moves. Now I got some the color up here. And then this is the really, really dark Daniel Smith color. So these marks over here were from the pastels when I had them setting there. Okay, so this one, actually you can see the granulation in this one. Quite a bit better. The darker colors seem to show the granulation better. I think because the tissue paper kind of sucks it up, it doesn't really give it a chance to flow. Let's try some of the sepia ink and see. Sort of splattering up into my sky. I don't want to cover up the green down here so much. So let's see. It might be too dark. That's interesting. I can make some effects with my paper towel. Let me pull some of that up. I think I want to get some more of that orange, more burnt sienna color in there. My brush is kind of muddied up. Yeah, I'm not sure how these granulating colors, I guess if you're just doing strictly a watercolor painting, maybe without the texture in it, they would work a little bit better. So that you can see the granulation. I'm also using, even though it's a watercolor sketchbook, it's not really the best paper. It's not 100% cotton paper. So it may not even show the effects either very well. But there is this neat little desert set. And it does have really these nice subtle colors in it. It's not super cheap, but it's not too bad. So if you like granulation in your watercolor and you paint stuff that has these sort of really light colors in them, I think it's an awesome little set. And then I just, again, accent it with some of the darker Daniel Smith granulation colors. But what I was really just testing out was the effects you get with tissue paper. Okay, so here's another page that I did that I added the tissue paper to. And this is actually watercolor paper. It's not 100% cotton, but it's a better quality watercolor paper than my sketchbook. So I'm actually going to try this. But what I wanted to do with this one is actually experiment with pastel and see how that works on tissue paper. And I'm just going to put this on dry first and then probably wet it. And these are basically hard pastels. They're not quite as soft as the softer pastels. And this, you'll see, is didn't quite get glued down completely, so we'll see how that works. And then I have some other colors here. And then I have this, it's kind of a white, which may or may not show up here at all. So I'm just going to spray this just to wet it, or I could just use a brush. But pastel is really pretty much like watercolor, like dried watercolor. Like it activates with water, just the same way you would activate something like Brusho, if you've ever used Brusho. It's basically just dried pigment. So adding water just lets you sort of float that pigment around. So this might give you a little bit more control over where you put the colors. And how much you kind of want to fuss with them. And while it's wet, you can come back with the pastel and it will darken up, right? And the water on here should kind of let it flow. I'm gonna get this thing pretty wet. Let's see if I can get some of the color to move. Now these pastels aren't super vibrant colors, so it's only going to do so much. So what I'm going to do is actually get out my little plein air watercolor palette. And I am going to add some more color. So this is a burnt sienna. And I could add and make a little bit more of the pinky red. And then maybe like some sap green to bump up some of the green areas here. It's kind of a nicer green with those brown colors. Anyway, it's kind of fun to play with different things. I saw another artist using tissue paper in a similar way. I think she was using it for collage papers or something, and I thought it would be fun to sort of just try it and see what kind of effects I can get using watercolor or inks or some different materials.